In the bright and electric city lights of Los Angeles, a moment unfolded that would soon echo across continents and touch millions of hearts. Onto the massive stage of America's Got Talent, the champions walked a humble, soft-spoken man from the busy streets of Manila, Marcelito Pomoy. His outfit was simple, almost too plain for such a grand stage, his shoes slightly worn, and his posture modest, as if he carried the weight of every hardship he had ever survived. He wasn't born into fame, luxury, or opportunity. He came from poverty, from nights where electricity was a luxury and food was uncertain, from a life where dreams often felt too far to reach. Yet here he was, standing under blinding spotlights in a city that many call the world's entertainment capital. As Marcelito positioned himself in front of the judges, the camera zoomed in on Simon Cowell's face, sharp, unreadable, and famously unforgiving. Simon looked at Marcelito the way he often looked at contestants he doubted, with a half-raised eyebrow, a slight smirk of disbelief, as if wondering how a poor man from Manila ended up on the world's biggest stage. There was a moment of silence that stretched across the room, a silence heavy with expectation, skepticism, and the quiet hopes of a man who had traveled across oceans just for this chance. It wasn't only the audience in Los Angeles watching, fans from New York, Chicago, Houston, and even Atlanta were tuned in, waiting to see if this underdog could truly deliver what his reputation promised. The music began, soft, delicate, glowing like the first rays of morning light. And as soon as Marcelito opened his mouth, everything changed. His voice soared through the arena with a powerful tenor that stunned the audience into instant stillness. It was crisp, controlled, and overflowing with emotion. People leaned forward, captivated, as the sound swept across the room like a wave. But then came the moment that would make history, the sudden, flawless shift into a female soprano so pure that it felt impossible coming from the same person. Gasps erupted. Hands flew to mouths. The crowd from Las Vegas, Seattle, Miami, and Boston watching on screens around the country found themselves frozen in disbelief. The reaction on Simon Cowell's face was unforgettable. His usual smirk slowly melted. His eyes widened, his jaw tightened, and he leaned forward in shock, as if trying to understand how one man, one poor man from Manila, was producing two voices, each more powerful than the last. It was the kind of moment that shatters expectations, the kind that proves talent can rise from anywhere, even from the humblest streets. The audience rose to their feet, applause echoing like thunder across the studio. Marcelito hadn't just delivered a performance, he had delivered a miracle on live TV, a reminder that greatness is not born from wealth, but from heart, grit, and unbelievable courage. When Marcelito stepped onto the stage for his second performance, the atmosphere shifted in a way that felt almost cinematic. The crowd in Los Angeles buzzed with anticipation, while viewers from New York, Dallas, Denver, and Orlando stayed glued to their screens, eager to see whether he could possibly outdo the shockwave he created the first time. He stood there again, humble, quiet, carrying that same gentle posture of a man who had walked through years of hardship and still somehow found the strength to smile. Nothing about him screamed superstar. Nothing about him suggested the spotlight belonged to him. Yet everyone watching felt a strange sense of destiny surrounding him, as though a man from poverty-stricken corners of Manila was meant to shake the world from the most unlikely stage of all. The music began slower this time, a kind of emotional invitation. As it unfolded, Marcelito's voice rose with the rich, masculine strength of a classical tenor from Rome, only to twist seamlessly into a bright, soaring soprano that felt like it drifted straight from Paris, then Rio de Janeiro, then Phoenix, then Berlin. The whole performance felt like a global journey wrapped into one body, one voice switching effortlessly between worlds. The audience watched in stunned disbelief. His ability was not just vocal talent, it was storytelling through sound, each shift representing emotions he gathered through years of surviving poverty, abandonment, and the daily struggle to live. From the judges' table, Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair at first, arms crossed, clearly preparing to analyze every note. But as Marcelito moved deeper into the performance, something interesting began to happen. Simon's expression softened, then slowly shifted into bewilderment. He tilted his head slightly, then leaned in, as if trying to catch Marcelito slipping, waiting for a mistake that never came. At one point, he muttered under his breath, "This shouldn't even be possible." His reaction wasn't anger, just disbelief that someone who came from so little could control a stage so completely. The audience erupted when Marcelito hit the high soprano notes and immediately followed them with a smooth tenor phrase. People from London, Las Vegas, Houston, and Chicago watching at home felt their hearts race. Even the toughest critics in the room couldn't hide their shock. Judges who rarely stood during performances pushed out of their seats, clapping like they were witnessing something historic. For Marcelito, those moments held deeper meaning. Each cheer, each gasp, each stunned expression represented the dreams he once carried barefoot through the streets of Cebu, singing on sidewalks for spare coins. Now, his voice traveled far beyond those streets, across cities, continents, and cultures. His message echoed with the same clarity as his impossible dual vocals: greatness does not depend on luxury, privilege, or fame. Sometimes, it rises from the very places the world overlooks. And that night, with the lights blazing and thousands cheering, Marcelito Pomoy proved exactly that. Marcelito returned to the America's Got Talent, the champion stage, for his second performance with even more weight on his shoulders. Though the lights of Los Angeles shined brightly around him, he carried with him the memories of a life in Cebu where struggle was a daily routine. Many watching from places like Rome, Rio de Janeiro, Paris, and Phoenix already knew his story: abandoned as a child, adopted into poverty, and growing up with little more than his voice to comfort him. But this time, when he stepped in front of the judges, he carried something stronger: the belief of millions who had seen him transform from a poor, unnoticed street singer into a global phenomenon. Simon Cowell watched Marcelito closely, arms crossed, face narrowed with that familiar mix of doubt and curiosity. He remembered the shock from the first performance, the moment he realized this humble man held a gift unlike any other. Yet even now, Simon seemed hesitant, as if still unsure whether Marcelito could truly rise to the challenge of performing against the world's best champions. The music began with a deep, rich male vocal that echoed like a cathedral bell, filling the room with intensity. People from London to Los Angeles, Mexico City to Melbourne, leaned in closer as the emotion began to build. And then, with a breathtaking switch, Marcelito soared into his upper voice, a feminine soprano so angelic and flawless that the audience erupted into gasps. This wasn't just singing, this was storytelling through two souls living inside one body. The performance swept the room like a storm, gathering every heart in its wake. Viewers from Toronto, Berlin, Singapore, and Chicago watched with chills running down their spines. Even the judges who had seen thousands of talents, Howie, Alicia, Heidi, were stunned. Simon Cowell, the man who rarely allowed himself to be impressed, slowly uncrossed his arms. His eyes sharpened. His mouth dropped open in disbelief. For a poor man who once had nothing, Marcelito was now commanding a stage that belonged to legends. The final high note, delivered in dual harmony, created a moment that felt bigger than the performance itself. When the audience leapt to its feet, it wasn't just applause, it was gratitude. Gratitude for proving that greatness can come from places the world often overlooks. Gratitude for reminding everyone that poverty does not limit potential. And gratitude for proving that no matter where you come from, whether the slums of Manila or the streets of Cebu, your voice can still rise loud enough to reach the entire world. Marcelito didn't just win over the crowd, he forced even Simon Cowell to acknowledge a truth he could not deny. Talent like Marcelito's wasn't just rare, it was historic.